The time has now come for the much anticipated panel discussion. Let us now invite the esteemed panelists on stage. So on today's panel, we have Mr. Ang Se King, who will be moderating the discussion, Ms. Michelle Wong from Ogilvy, Singapore, Ms. Darshini Santhanam from Google Asia Pacific, Ms. Deborah Wee, co-founder of hipvan.com, Mr. Terence Yao, CEO of Enviably Me, and Mr. Yang Wah Kiang, Chairman of Nanyang Optical. Let's give them a round of applause.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We thought it's nice to round the day off. We can hear from real businesses who have actually tried their hands on e-commerce. And so we have got together a distinguished panel. Mr. Yang here, he was on TV on Channel 8 last night. So I learned a lot about his business, not that I didn't know. But Mr. Yang is actually is a founder as well as chairman of Nanyang Optical. And Mr. Yang has grown his business not only in having one of the biggest chain of optical shops in Singapore, but he's also ventured abroad to Europe and the rest. I'll let him tell you more about his business and what he does in R&D as well as venturing into e-commerce and extending his reach abroad in a bit. You know Michelle. Terence Yao. Terence is a good friend of ours, and of course with all the good friends, he gets arm-twisted once in a while with helping us with stuff. Terence spent years, 15 years if I'm not wrong, was an accountant by training just like myself, decided don't want to be an accountant, joined Procter & Gamble for 15 years. So having done a lot at Procter & Gamble, all kinds of products, SK2 is one of the last ones, did diapers, did sanitary female products before as well. So he's very experienced, and he decided that he wanted to do something different. So he's now a boss, and he just shared with me earlier that as a boss, he does every single thing, right? Just like Michelle mentioned. He just kind of said that he also did some carrying of boxes this morning as well. By the way, he has a shop over at Wheelock, and he is responsible for bringing this product called Melissa shoes. He wears one of them today. He's just asked me when I'm going to buy one from there. So I said, well, as a poor academic, I need to save for it first. Okay, that's Terence. Thanks very much. Darshini, you know, from Google. And last but not least, our graduate, Deborah Wee. Deborah is one of our graduates. Deborah also started with working for someone. She worked for Rocket Internet, and she helped them launch their platform. And also, like Terence, she decided to do it on her own. She's now the co-founder, or she's the co-founder of hipvan, and I'll let her describe to you why it's called hipvan. And she told us earlier, very interesting. And she will actually also share with you what she does in terms of those kind of products that she brings in, the design products and stuff like that. Okay, now let me now first start off with Mr. Yang. Mr. Yang said in his TV program last night that the aspiration for Nanyang Optical is to spread the products to every corner of the world. So I'd like to ask Mr. Yang, with a platform like all his shop, what can e-commerce do for you to meet your aspiration, bring all your products to every corner of the world? And what have you done to equip yourself with that kind of capabilities?
Okay, I started as an eyewear retailer, opening optical shops in Singapore. And then I moved on to start off an R&D units, and we developed frames and sunglasses, our own house brands. And of course, over the years we evolve, and we start to export to Europe. And recently I actually purchased a distribution arm in Paris, and start also distributing eyewear to European countries as well as USA. Now, of course, we also embark on e-commerce in this digital age. And we find that, of course, there are a lot to learn, especially for me at my age. I'm 66 years old. So, I'm actually way behind a lot of young, aspiring who are so, well knowledgeable and equipped with this e-commerce knowledge. I'm struggling, actually, except that I find that I have to keep in the pace. Now, of course, for the retail, for example, of course, we set up our own website and also we have our own Facebook where we engage, social media kind of agency to assist. And at the same time, we also engage bloggers. Of course, the way I look at it is you have to work with the right partners. Very important is it's not just setting up a web page and start putting your products and start selling, because you got to have the right strategy. It's not just be one of the me too. For example, when we start with the bloggers, we focus on one of our product, which is a kids eyewear, which we, through our own R&D effort, we managed to create a very strong frame that kids can bump and throw about and yet stable on the face. So that one we work with parenting bloggers so that we hit the right channel, and we send them frames and let the kids try on and we get good reviews. So it's a matter of getting the right match that we get, the business going. So this is one example. And of course, for our overseas distribution business, what we have done is we set up a e-commerce platform where they can look at our stock range so that they know up to date what we can offer to them. At the same time, of course, when we have this e-commerce set up, because of the different time zone, so that while we are sleeping, we're still getting the business ongoing, So, for example, we deal with Canada, which is 12 hours in time difference. So we find that definitely, it becomes more productive and more effective. So these are the few examples that I can share with all of you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Young. Terence, you just shared with us earlier, before we came into this room, that Melissa's Shoe didn't really start as a retail front first. And you sort of experimented with online first. And then you went on to doing your front store, right? Maybe you want to share this. I mean, in some sense, online business seems very simple. But maybe you can actually share with us what are the sort of nuances of the online business that has to make you change your mind, and then now you're actually going into it. So
sure. So 4 years ago, when I've decided to do my own thing, I thought, like many people, that the easiest way to test out new businesses or new brands is to go online, because you think very simply, online means no minimal labor, no rental, right? So I think that's very logical, simple thinking that we pursued, and so we started our first site. What we planned to take 3 months to set up ended up taking 9 months and double or triple the budget, because online is never as easy a channel as you think it is, but if done well, it has its rewards, because it is an important channel. That's why it needs that kind of time and investment to do well. So we started out our first site. It wasn't easy, but through that we gained enough confidence. And it was actually also, it was because of the first site that we got the help of, UOB-SMU Center to help us get the right consumer insights, consumer learnings about online shopping behavior, about shopping needs with regards to fashion products that were sustainable or eco-friendly. And through the first site, we gained enough confidence to then start up our own brick-and-mortar shop. After which, we focused a lot more on brick-and-mortar business because that is still reality in Singapore, especially in the fashion scene. And having stabilized that and having brought in a very, very strong brand like Melissa Shoes, we are now refocusing back on online and e-commerce, and therefore commissioned another study from UOB-SMU to help us again. And we are now on the second stage. So it's a bit of a roller coaster or a bit of a circular learning curve that gets bigger and better. We learn and fail cheaply at first, and then we move on to learn and grow and build the next generation and the next generation in a better and more relevant way, and always trying to stay in touch with our shoppers, our consumers, how they shop in brick and mortar, how they shop online. How do we integrate our online business activities with our brick and mortar? Very much like I think the point that Michelle was making, which was that it has to be thought of as an integrated ecosystem, right? So that's us in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. The scheme that Terence mentioned is actually the SME consulting program that I mentioned earlier in my welcome speech, and this is actually active learning. I guess the portal, what we did was to try to build an ecosystem for learning. People go to our portal, they learn, and they get inspired to learn some more. They engage our students, and they learn together with the students. And I think what you can actually get from what Terence is saying is also that research is required this day and age to get the primary data to allow you to make a more well-informed decision. Now, let me, before going to Deborah, maybe ask Michelle, is this the usual misconception or the myth as you relate to businesses going into online? It may seem very simple, but is that the common problem?
Yes, I think, and if I compare you all to, the big global brands, they also face the same problem. They think that online is simple. I just want a website. I want a couple of pages. I just want to put a Facebook page up. But then the effort towards making the website relevant and appealing and making it searchable is a lot more than that. So it's not as easy as it sounds. And actually the challenge between big businesses and yours is the same.
Thank you very much. Now, Deborah, why don't you tell everyone why your company is called HipVan?
Okay, it's a pleasure. Okay, so HipVan, HIP space VAN. Hip comes from the hippie era, where everyone was not afraid to follow their goals, their aspirations, just be free and independent. And van comes from the word van, of course, because we want to be the drivers of this philosophy. And this is hopefully apparent in our website, because HipVan essentially is an e-commerce website for design-inspired products. So design-inspired products could be everything. We do furniture, we do home accessories, we do fashion, we do food. But essentially every product is linked by the fact that they have a story to tell. The story of its design, the story of its innovation, something that makes it relevant to how we actually live our everyday life. It's not just a chair, but rather it's a chair that is made to make you feel a bit more comfortable, a bit better in your lifestyle, basically, yeah.
And you actually worked with Rocket, as I mentioned,
yes.
Rocket Internet,
yes.
To launch the e-commerce platform,
yes.
That spans across Asian countries, yeah. And now brings in millions in monthly revenue every day. Companies that are big, that embark on this, do they actually also face challenges, as what Terence mentioned? Definitely.
Regardless of whether you're a big company or a small company, or SME, or just something just started up, you definitely face the same challenges. The only difference is that they have a budget. And I guess that's the main differentiating factor that between a big company and a small company. So my experience with Rocket Internet is that we were experimenting with the marketing as well. It was a difficult setup because there were a few ventures. There was Zalora, of course, I'm sure all of you know Zalora by now, the fashion one. There was also Home24, which I'm sure all of you also know. It was the furniture venture, which unfortunately had to close down. So let's talk about Home24 in Rocket. It was a market that was new, it was fresh. We still didn't know whether or not people were keen on buying furniture purely online. We know that Asians, Singaporeans, tend to enjoy touching, feeling, seeing, bringing their family down to IKEA and seeing whether or not it would fit into their living room, fit into their home. So this was a market that we were unsure of, and looking for that relevant audience online was also an issue because the younger ones might be more keen on buying stuff online, but might not necessarily have the budget to buy it. The older ones have the budget, but they are not so keen on buying furniture or home accessories online, for example. So even if you have the money, we still needed to basically break it down and make the money work for us, like how Darshini actually mentioned earlier as well. So this, I think, is a common problem, whether or not you're big or small. Yeah, finding the audience is very important.
Darshini, some of these challenges that some of these companies face can be actually solved by the analytics and stuff like that. And I think, if I understand correctly, Deborah thinks that Mixpanel and Google Analytics actually help. How do these tools help SMEs to become more relevant or more effective in e-commerce?
Sure. So I'm going to introduce you to a fabulous tool. It's called Search. But I'm not kidding, really. A lot of the data that you may want to be looking for is available online. When I start out researching for this presentation, when I start out researching anything, I start with a simple Google search. Ask Google, what % of people are doing what online in Singapore? You'll find your answer. So I think that while yes, it is difficult, it is complex, and unfortunately, I think, or fortunately or unfortunately, it isn't an old topic. So we don't have veterans who can stand up and say these are the best practices, right? And it is something that will be very different for each business. There is no one-size-fits-all answer. So because we don't have enough expert advice, or we don't have the perfect advice for each person, I think that the best place to start, and the simple place to start, is by researching what information is available online. And if you're unable to find information, for example, about Singapore or your business or specific audiences, look at similar markets. Look at similar markets in other regions and see what people have done. There are some great examples available. Apart from doing a search, you could also do a search on YouTube to find some information. I've found some great self-help videos self-made videos that help you with tips on what you can do as an SMB to get started. So that's just kind of the wisdom of the world, right, that you can tap into. But I think that apart from that, yes, we do have a lot of other tools that you could tap into if you wanted. Some that you can use before you get started, some that you can use after you get started. So before you get started, you could use tools like, we have a traffic estimator tool to identify what is the traffic you're likely to get for the keyword eco-friendly shoes on a day-to-day basis. You could use the keyword tool to get a sense of what are related keywords people are searching for. And all this, by the way, you can find simply by doing a search. Search for Google Keyword Traffic Estimator tool. You'll find it. It'll be the first result. Search for Google Keyword tool. It'll come up. We also have another much bigger tool called Trends, which gives you data going back until 2004 for which words gain popularity at what point in time. So it gives you a sense of kind of much larger trends. And you can use that information then to kind of identify what matters to people when, and how you can then tailor your message to make it matter to people at that point in time. Classic example is, the holidays. People like to travel, and people start planning travel around now for their December vacation break. Or people will start planning other activities towards Chinese New Year. Another example that I wanted to take, which is not so evident but comes only when you do your research, is that the keyword engagement rings peaks just before Christmas. And the keyword wedding dresses peaks a couple of weeks later. No surprises there, right? But it's really interesting. You can play around with this tool, match two keywords to each other, and look at trends against each, just to identify what's going on in the world. What are people doing in mass, right? So, like I said, start with using search. Search will also give you access to a lot of other third-party research studies done by people like ComScore, eMarketer. Lots of that information freely available online. You can register for that. You can use existing tools. And then once you get started, you can use Google Analytics, definitely. Set it up on your website, integrate it. Really study what your users are doing. Now, when people walk into your storefront, you're watching them. You know which shelves they're going to. You know at what point they turn down and walk out. Or you know what makes them come back, right? So do the same thing online. And you can do that very quickly and easily through analytics. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much. Let me ask an around question, and I'll open up for Q&A. I'm sure many of you would have a lot of questions that you would like to ask our panelists. Mr. Young, back to you. SMEs generally have limited resources, as we understand. And if you want to reach the world, a market such as China, for example, is huge. And it's sometimes a bit difficult to do it on your own. How do you actually look at a big market such as China? I mean, it could be any other countries in the world. How do you actually expand?
I started in China, actually. Recently, when I read reports, a Singapore paper today, it mentioned that last year, 2012, the e-commerce sales was 1.3 trillion yen, and it's growing. In fact, just 5-6 years ago, it was almost nothing. It grows very fast. And there was a survey by PricewaterhouseCoopers, and the number of people they survey, the 58% mentioned that at least once a week they purchase online in China. It shows that there are, of course, big opportunities for e-commerce business in China. So that, of course, attracts me a lot. And since I'm in the eyewear business, in fact, I just actually invest in a young group of web specialists. They have, of course, IT personnel, engineers, web designers, and so on. Okay, and I invested in this young team, and next year I'm going to embark on online sales and marketing of eyewear. So that, I think, give me a good start because I already have my own office and base in Shenzhen. So it helps me a lot. And also, I don't have to throw in too much money because it's a young startup group. So that I'm leveraged on their know-how and their so-called passion and the drive and the commitment they have. A lot of young people, a lot of qi. The Chinese call qi. So that's where I actually bet on this young team, and of course I hope I bet on the right horse.
Well, he knows he's into gambling in that sense. Okay, back to you, Terence. Terence, you said you're embarking on the e-commerce online business again. We started. Can you share with us how big is the team? Does it cost a lot to? I mean, you did mention earlier that it takes up a lot of time and a lot of effort, more than what anyone can imagine. So how big is the team, and how do you actually run it?
Yeah, so the second time round, we're a lot smarter. We're doing a much bigger e-commerce venture than the first one, with a lot less resources and people. Pretty much, we worked with an external partner, one person, for about 3 months before launch to set up the website. And ongoing, I have half a headcount within my own internal team to do the back-end maintenance and customer service. And my external vendor is commissioned on a very part-time basis to ensure that our online marketing is maximized through Google Ad Search, Google organic searches, SEOs. We're going into banner buys now. The only other addition that we have is we are integrating all our channels. We are multiple channel business. So Melissa shoes are sold in our own boutiques. We have department stores. We have independent retailers. We have e-commerce. So that's 4 channels, right? So we are a multiple channel business across 2 countries. Today we are Singapore and Malaysia. We have a very small HQ team that between the 6 of us in the HQ, we cover all that's needed between 4 channels, 2 countries. And we integrate our marketing activities across channels within my marketing team. So, we've learned from the first round how now better to do it. And with a more stable and bigger business, a better brand, we have the scale to do it even bigger and better this time. So far results are great. We just achieved a record month last month for our Melissa online e-commerce business, and very, very optimistic that we can double the business yet again within the next 3 to 6 months. So very aggressive growth path. Online is reality for us. Brick and mortar is still a bigger part of the business, but you cannot ignore online e-commerce. You cannot ignore online marketing, because they're all integrated. What you do online and brick and mortar help each other today. You can't have one without the other.
Congratulations on a record month.
Thank you.
So you're buying lunch?
I'll buy lunch and dinner.
Okay. No, actually, the other thing that what I'd like to build on is, the logistics is actually a big part of it. And Singapore being a logistic hub, do you have anything to share on this?
Yeah, so
it's a trick question, by the way.
Yeah. So I was complaining just now earlier before we came in that I thought that Singapore has always been touted as a logistics hub. In many ways it is, but as I got onto the second round of e-commerce business, we realized that the logistics part didn't really, Singapore's greatness in logistics didn't really apply to this new world called e-commerce world, especially for e-commerce businesses based out of Singapore. We've experienced this firsthand, the hard way twice. We're still going through a lot of pain. With regards to end-to-end logistics management for e-commerce business, from point of purchase to point of consumer getting the product. There aren't enough experienced or high quality enough vendors who are able to take you end-to-end yet. There are many individuals, people who are good at individual legs of that fulfillment chain, but none who can do it end-to-end, from order management, inventory management, pick, pack, delivery, returns, refunds, and so on. So that remains an opportunity. an obstacle, but I think also an opportunity for other small businesses or government agencies to encourage, because if Singapore is going to be focused or want to bring up this area of tech and e-commerce for small or for big businesses, I think fulfillment will be a critical pillar to enabling this sector to explode.
Thank you very much for sharing. Deborah, your online business focuses on design-based products. And I think there's some truth in the sense that some of these online businesses lower barriers to entry. Do you see that as one of the biggest issues? What is the competitive advantage that you have in your business that will keep yourself going and relevant?
I think, generally speaking, e-commerce tends to have a lower barrier to entry, of course, because essentially there's lower startup costs, etc. But for us, for HipVan, what we perceive to be our barrier to entry is our great service, our great site, our products, obviously. Our goal is obviously to bring in new, fresh, exciting products for our customers, and we source internationally for them and not just within Singapore itself. We work very well with independent designers and local designers as well, so we're trying to create a name for ourselves within the local design community. So hopefully this would be something that would be a bit harder to breach if, let's say, there are other similar websites. So essentially, the customer service end-to-end, of course, is something that we perceive would be something that people would come back for more if we provide good customer service, fulfillment, etc. So coupled with everything, good products, good branding, good customer service, we hope that this would be a bit harder to just forget about.
In one of the articles I read, you mentioned that some of these statistics that you collated in your website really helped you. How has that really helped you to be more effective?
Okay, so this sort of draws a line with what Darshini has mentioned as well, because we use a lot of Google Analytics in terms of measuring our data. So I think that's one of the strengths of being an e-commerce business, is that you can monitor and you can track every single customer that comes through your website, which is impossible. Well, not impossible, it's definitely harder if you were to have a retail store. So we use Google Analytics a lot. We track on a week-to-week basis. We know where customers fall out, what doesn't really work on our website, and we always constantly tweak our website to make sure that we can enhance the user experience on the site. So being a full e-commerce business, we think this is extremely important and extremely helpful for us, because us as the team that works on it, sometimes we can only feel that this layout would work. We feel, based on our own experience, that based on our own shopping experience, that this is user-friendly. But numbers don't lie, and if people drop out, let's say there's a lot of product views, but there are very few add to carts, it obviously tells us something. Could be it's too expensive, or there's the buy button is not visible enough. Simple things. Because people that shop online, in a way, I would say they are very lazy and they're very spoiled. So if they don't see something that is easily available to them, they can't find it, they lose interest within 3 to 5 minutes. You're like, okay, it's a terrible site. I don't want to go to it anymore. I can't find what I want to buy. I can't find the information. It's so difficult, and it just drops off. So this kind of information is extremely useful to us, because we need to know, and we are growing. We are a very young business, so for us, we use all this information in order to make ourselves better and to generate a better overall user experience for our customers. Yeah.
Thank you. Michelle, being recent, being new, is that something that is required? I mean, so when you mount a site, do you actually have to change it very often for people to get excited, or to
I think there are two ways. One is optimization is one. So if what Deborah was talking about is that people are familiar. Everybody does SIA, as Singapore Airlines. Do you remember when they changed their site and there was a lot of complaints because suddenly nobody could find their favorite button on the left, and then the KrisFlyer car wasn't turning up. So that, I think, a change for the sake of that, interrupting people's normal expected behavior to the site is wrong. Whereas in Deborah's case, it's all about optimization. So I know that if you go from page 1 to page 2, and then somehow you decide, oh, page 2 sucks, right? I'm going to go. So something is wrong in that experience, and you want to change that, then it's about optimization. So I don't think it's designed for the sake of design.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, I'd like to get some of you or all to ask questions to our panelists. If there's any question, can you approach the mic and let us know who you are and what company you're from, and then fire away. David, our friend.
Hi, my name is David Gabriel. I am a businessman, but the business I want to talk to you about is my restaurant, the Brazilian restaurant on 6th Avenue. I've just started to dabble in social media and have set up a Facebook page, which is managed by a contractor. And we have started putting out a lot of messages on Facebook of what you can expect and what you can see and all of that sort of stuff. The whole idea is obviously to drive traffic into my restaurant. Are there considerations that are different from the kind of things that you've been talking about? Because in a retail shop where you're going in and you're buying a product and you can pick it up and walk away with it, or you can have it sent to you, and you can wear it and appreciate it, whereas I've got to drive people to pick themselves up and move and come and actually sit down and consume in my premises. Otherwise, I'm dead. Yeah? Are there different considerations in using the digital marketing and the social media to achieve that?
Anyone want to answer it? Otherwise, I point.
I could just address maybe partly, and then I can pass it on to the others, because I think that this is really a mixed bag of a question. It's a great question, though. Thank you. I think, yes, there are certain different considerations you need to look into when you offer a service, which requires people's time and money. The first is, are you available when people are searching for restaurant options? If I were looking for Brazilian lunch places for this weekend, will I find you? And if I find you, will I get information about where you're located? Right? So, number one, it'll be good for you to have a kind of places listing, so you come up on a map when people search for you. I think that's very important, especially in Singapore, because people are not going to come all the way across the country on a weekend for a lunch, unless it's going to be really, really worth it, right? So kind of put your flag on the map and make that map visible simply by setting up something as small as a places listing. Another consideration for businesses like restaurants is what people are saying about you online. Something like 97% of people who read reviews are impacted. That is, their decisions are impacted by reviews online. So get the right people to talk about you, about the right things about your restaurant. So do you want them to talk about a special lunch? Do you want them to talk about a weekday lunch offer? Do you want them to talk about your brunch? Right? Identify your kind of key offerings and get the right people, get food bloggers to talk about you. Invite them over for a lunch. Ask them to blog about you. So that then creates a buzz. And that buzz then impacts people significantly. So especially restaurants, what people are saying about you is probably more important than how visible you are. So, and my other tip would have been the geographic location, kind of mark out on a map. So when I search for weekend food places, I want to see it on a map so I can tie it in with another activity or decide if I want to go all the way. That would be kind of my 2 cents.
I think for Brazil, the relevant word is meat.
That
You
too,
can't
yes.
miss that one.
I'll actually just quickly add on. I think the other consideration is, when they come to your restaurant, a lot of them will check in on Foursquare, on Facebook. So can you retrain one of your managers to kind of go, hey, Melissa, you've just checked in. I know that this is your first time, for example. So it's connected to customer experience. And then if they were to post pictures and stuff, get them to tag it back to your Facebook page. And as they share it, so you've got a happy customer telling their friends about that. So that would be the difference between the e-commerce and your business.
Any comments?
Yeah, I think maybe you were specifically also asking about what is the difference between someone like me. I have e-commerce and I have a retail shop, and we are very active on Facebook too, versus someone like you who is focused on a restaurant business. What's the difference between the way we run our Facebook or social media and the way you would run it? I think the differences are in the details. People who go to a restaurant will look at food or think about going to a restaurant slightly differently than someone who is looking for a handbag or shoe or clothes to buy. But the principles are the same. Social media or Facebook is critical to any businesses today, small or big, especially the small businesses, because Facebook is such a quick, simple, and cheap way of reaching out well, whether it's for F&B or for retail. So it's become a critical and one of the key pillars of marketing communications for any business today, right? I would only just add that Facebook can be more of a double-edged sword for F&Bs rather than retail businesses, because there's a lot more inherent risks to service failure in an F&B business. And if you run a very active Facebook page, the better you do, the better your social media ratings are, but where there are service failures, they also get amplified. And your credibility becomes at stake, not just in how you respond, but how you handle the postings, which can get pretty extreme or unreasonable sometimes. And that's the differences I see, that for F&B, there are big gains, but also big risks, which tend to be a lot more modulated for normal fashion or retail business. But the principles are the same.
Maybe I add on a bit. Similarly, I'm also in the retail, selling glasses. I feel that, as a retailer, it's the same. Whether you're online or offline, you need to have sound, so-called online business strategy. It's not just pass it on to a social media company and just let them do the job. You got to really work with them closely to really come up with sound, good business plan. Or else, you just honestly, there are a lot of failures, many failures. The percentage of success really online in terms of selling through and success are very small percentage. So I think the real challenge is to do it right and do it well. That is the real test. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any question? Yes. Lee.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for all your insights. My name is Ada. I'm from a public relations agency, Crivaltis. I understand so far you have given tips about how to do digital marketing, etc. But it seems a lot has been focused on B2C businesses. Would you have any advice for business-to-business, B2B digital marketing campaigns? Another question I have is specifically for Ms. Dashini. I understand that Google has made some changes to algorithm in Penguin 2.0. What are some of the things that business owners have to take note in optimizing their websites? Thank you.
Can I get Michelle to answer the question? She's worked with many Fortune 500 companies in B2B and B2C.
So I forgot your name. Ada. If you talk about B2B, actually Facebook is still relevant, but it's in the difference in the messaging. I would actually recommend you to kind of do your due diligence of understanding your target audience, their journey. But the difference in the platforms, for example, like LinkedIn, is a slightly more networking tool that people use. So other than looking for jobs, there are actually great communities that are built. So IBM, for example, built a community of C-suite leaders in a very closed-door community to talk about solutions as well as how their solutions are helping other people. So you can look at it as more of a lead generation sort of tool and community building. I don't think you can actually convert lead generation straight into your website to conversion.
Yep. Just to add on to Michelle's point, actually, in terms of B2B as well, we've seen some success even with AdWords. So, for example, doctors, right? If you wanted to target a group of doctors, it's very easy to identify where doctors are spending their time online, and then target your messaging there. Again, it can be a kind of a low-cost way in which you can put up a quick image ad or a text ad with some information to target people of certain professions who are spending time on certain sites. So that's one alternative as well, I think, especially when you don't have an identified group in mind, but just know you want to reach this profession. All right, so your question to me was around SEO. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to answer that. My area of expertise is really advertising, and as a company, we keep the two separately so that we don't impact each other. It's very conscious. So unfortunately, I won't be able to answer that, but I'm going to say that I'm sure there's some information available about that online. Yeah. We do have a very active webmaster forum, and I would strongly urge you to check for maybe past questions around something similar there, or post a question of your own. And there is a central team sitting in Mountain View, that will address those concerns. So I hope that helps. I'm sorry I wasn't able to answer it. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question. Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Chong. I'm from Brian Tracy Private Limited. I would like to address this question to Ms. Darshini. I have actually used AdWords quite a bit in the past, but what happened was that when I saw the costs that are incurred in my credit card, and it was quite a lot, but it did not translate into enquiries or sales for my company. So when that happens, do you have any advice for us where we can get more information as to why the customer is not engaged in the website, or the bounce rates and all that, and where we can get information, and what can we do, or how can we interpret the information so that going forward we can coordinate the AdWords spending plus the way the website is being configured so that we are able to engage and get more sales eventually.
Yes.
John, what kind of business are you in?
I'm in training, in sales and leadership training. I represent Brian Tracy International. We are a Singapore franchise. Yeah.
All right, great question. And I must admit, this is a question we get a lot from SMBs, much like yourselves. So yes, we can help you with this, and the easiest thing for you to do would be just to write into us. And the reason I'm saying this is it will be different for each person. What works for each business will be very, very significantly different online. Number one, if you're, when you get started, don't just let your budget go. Watch it. Now, information is available about how your account is performing almost every couple of hours. You get very fresh information in your account. So day one, you get started. Day two, start watching your budget. Don't wait for an alert to go off on your credit card before you act on it, all right? That's number one, because if you are proactive about it, from the first day, you can constantly optimize your account to reduce your costs and have control over where you're spending the money, all right? That's number one. But that said, if you've gotten started and you've gotten a bit burnt, write into us. We have a team of dedicated specialists who will help you out with your accounts. After looking into your account, looking at your product, and identifying areas that you can grow in. And I have a colleague as well who's present here with me. She's sitting up front. You could approach her or me later if you want to start the discussion. But we have a team waiting to help you out, so write into us. There's a follow-up question.
He's back with his credit card.
No, yeah. Is there one function in what Google they call the webmaster tool? Is that something that we need to use to actually find out more about our marketing methods?
Webmaster tools will be useful for you to understand where you stand on SEO. That is on the natural results. That won't be directly related to AdWords though. But that said, it'll give you an idea of how well your site is optimized. And if your site is optimized, it will impact AdWords as well, because it means that people are more likely to purchase, that it's likely to get a higher quality score, lower costs, etc. So it'll have its own kind of implications, not directly, but a good site is a good site, and it's worth looking at webmaster tools to identify what makes for the good site.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Kim. I'm from Jack True. We're in the business of making bags. Okay, I would like to seek the panel advice for a business who is traditionally in the business of selling consumer products via channels. Okay, now in view of the change in consumer purchase pattern, now how can this company prepare itself to start selling its products online directly to the customers, bearing in mind that the products are still sold in the retail channel, and Singapore being a very small market, pricing information is almost easily attainable. So how can a business, let's say for example Hewlett Packard, they decide to start selling printers and ink cartridges online right now, but they have all the stores out there selling as well. So how can HP start making preparations for the change in the future? Thank you.
Mr. Young, maybe you want to answer that question because you also do some branding stuff, right?
From my own experience, of course, I have my distributors in certain countries. They carry my brands, and then, of course, I will never get direct into the opticians or to the consumer, okay, the end consumer. If I intend to do that, of course, the only way, in my mind, I will have to, for example, in China, I have a distributor selling my 4 brands, okay? Now, when I intend to go online, for example, I won't sell the same thing. I will design and create another new collections using different brand name. So there will be no conflict of interest. You have to keep your integrity that when you are appointing distributors, you've got to be sure that you supported them wholeheartedly. Then you can end up with a win-win kind of a partnership. So I would have no intention to destroy that. If I want to do direct to consumer, I will create another brands with different concept, different design, and so on to differentiate the difference. Yes, that's from my own experience.
Terence, any words of wisdom?
Okay, I'll keep it simple. I think when you want to deal with multiple channel strategy, it's about just two things. First thing is to be very clear about your pricing strategy. I think that's critical. A lot of the mess comes about because end retail pricing gets screwed up. Okay, so whilst we cannot dictate end retail pricing, there are many things that a principal or distributor can do to ensure price harmony. So that's as far as I'll say on pricing. I think the second thing is to have equitable trading terms between retail channels, not necessarily equal trading terms, but equitable trading terms that is fair and transparent. And then there is a sense that there's faith and trust that you as a principal are acting in every channel's in best interests, as well as your own e-commerce, that you view all channels equally and fairly, and treat them equally and fairly. So I think that as long as you get these two things right, you'll be pretty fine for a multi-country, multi-channel business of any sort.
Thank you. We have time for a last question, or perhaps two questions. Yes, please.
My name is Asha. I'm a dentist and I run a clinic, Smile Makers Dental Clinic. I have a website. I've been using AdWords and I find my website moderately successful. I have been told to use social media, but I have been very skeptical of social media because I find it very trivial. People pack it up with very inconsequential things. And when people talk, they talk most loudly when they have something bad to say. And I just don't want to get in there because people love to talk badly about dentists anyway. So how can social media work for a dentist? Mind you, we cannot use testimonials. We cannot use before and after pictures. We cannot talk about discounts, vouchers, or promotions.
Awkward silence. Yes.
Can I maybe just give you a suggestion off the top of my head? When we think about social media, it's not just Facebook, not just Twitter. What about YouTube? So YouTube is one of the most watched places. Can you, for example, develop videos about dental? I don't know whether it's about what happens when you replace your crown. You know how when people, the fear that people have towards dentists is also because they don't know what goes on whilst they have their mouth open, right? So one top of my head could be, can you produce videos of educating people that actually this is the process we go through? And it's kind of an edutainment sort of angle. Example.
I think, just my 2 cents worth, the priority for dentists might not be so much Facebook, because of the inherent issues and risks. But as long as you buy up on your Google search buys and Google ads, I think that's important because people do Google to look out for dentists. And I think if you get that sorted out and you are on some other relevant sites mentioned as a credible dental practice, more third-party testimonials rather than from your own, because you can't do that. I think if you get these two done well, it's pretty okay.
I'll just add to that. I think there are a lot of groups online that also give recommendations to each other. Now, this is typically a business where you want a recommendation, right? Someone who's been at your practice then goes out and says, I totally recommend Dr. Asha. So you wanna identify people who can then influence those communities. So there are, for example, I found recently communities targeted at expat women who sit at home in Singapore. So that's a great group. These are the guys who are going to decide where their kids go for dental work. They're going to decide what time and where their husband's dental appointment is, right? So you want to try and identify some of these key groups and appeal to them. And just to add on to Michelle's point about using YouTube as well, we've seen a lot of success with anything to do with beauty on YouTube in Singapore. So that could be an angle that you can use. And it's relatively cheap. Now with a good phone, you can record a video and put it up. So, you could get students to do some of the work for you. You could find, you could kind of invest in your existing people in your circles to get them to kind of create useful content that people will then use and then finally find you with.
So once again, let us thank the panelists for their valuable insight.